So, in the West, in Europe, in the United States, in Oceania, they always talk about democracy, how democracy is so fantastic, it's so wonderful, it's so great. Well, what the hell is democracy? I mean, they talk about it all the time. It should be easy to define, isn't it? Huh? I mean, what are we talking about when we talk about democracy? Well, a democracy is a government, and the famous phrase, of the people, by the people, for the people, right? So a democracy is a government of the people that's you know made up of people of the nation, and it's supposed to act in the best interest of the people of the nation. And the people of the nation ought to have a say in how they're governed. I mean, that's the whole point. See? When the people have no say in how they are ruled, that's called tyranny. And a democracy is the reverse of a tyranny, the opposite of a tyranny. It's where the people's voice is heard. If you live in one of the democracies of the West, in Europe and the United States, can you honestly tell me that your voice is heard? That what you would like to see actually takes place, actually happens? Huh? Can you honestly tell me that? I mean, because look at Europe, for instance. Europe certainly did not want millions of immigrants from the Middle East and Africa. And, you poll people in Europe, in any country of Europe, and more than 60% say no more immigrants, no more, we don't want any more. Does the government listen? No! The government of the European countries does whatever it wants and keeps on bringing in more and more migrants. And they make no effort to stop the flow. Oh, they sort of like say, oh yeah, we're going to try to do it. And, they might send a few boats there into the Mediterranean, but they actually don't stop the incredible flow of immigrants from the Middle East and Sub-Saharan Africa. Now, do they? Of course not. And all the crime and misery in European cities, it's because of these migrants. Yeah, and we all know it. And it's going against the will of the people. And you, Canada bros, you had your big convoy that went to Ottawa, arguing about you were sick and tired of vaccine mandates, you were sick and tired of all kinds of stuff. Did your voice matter? Are you able to travel outside of Canada without having a proof of vaccination? Can you? No, you cannot. Your voice didn't matter. You had like a big to-do, honking your horn for days and days and weeks, and it didn't change anything. No, it didn't, yeah? And you ask Americans right now, how many Americans want to go to war with Russia over Ukraine? I bet it is like, maybe 20%, if they're lucky. If you told me that it's like 15, 17%, yeah, that sounds about right. The vast majority of Americans do not want to go to war with Russia over Ukraine. And is that stopping the Congress critters in Washington from goading the United States into war? Of course not. They are pushing the United States with both hands into a war with Russia. Now they're finally admitting that the war over Ukraine, is a proxy war. They're admitting it. And they keep saying, we have to do something. We have to save Ukraine. We have to stand up to the Russians. Who the hell is we? Huh? The American people. You in the United States. You're going to have to go and fight against the Russians, even though you don't want to. Yeah? Yeah. And you start looking at all the democracies, right? And anything that you want doesn't happen. And the things that are legitimate grievances of the people, they don't get solved. The medical crisis in the United States, I don't see why we call it a crisis, because it's chronic. It's been going on for decades. They've been talking about healthcare since the 90s, for crying out loud. And prices keep skyrocketing. People go bankrupt. People who've done everything right, who paid all their bills, never had debt, and they get cancer, and all of a sudden they are flat broke. Even though they have insurance and all the rest of it, they're flat broke. And you have young people going to universities and carrying all this huge amount of student debt, and nobody's making any effort to revamp the education system, to reform it, to prevent this grotesque usury from being inflicted on young people. Usury that cripples their ability to own their own home, cripples their ability to pursue occupations that they truly enjoy, and instead pursue occupations that are lucrative enough to pay off their student loans. They're saddled with these loans, and they can't start families until their mid to late 30s, for crying out loud. Do you know the average time that people have student loans, that they wind up paying student debt, is 21 years? That's the average time it takes to discharge student loans in the United States. These are serious problems. Is your leadership doing anything about it? No. Do people complain about it? Sure they do. All the time. Everybody does. And nothing happens. No reform. You live in a democracy. Your voice doesn't matter. Nothing you say will change the situation that you are in. Nothing. Understand the kind of regime you are living in. Understand that, for all this talk about democracy and rights and, government of the people, by the people, for the people, you who are listening to me, you are part of the majority in your country. And yet nothing that you desire, no grievance that you have, no matter how legitimate, will be addressed and solved. None of it. Because it makes money for certain groups that are paying your leaders. So basically, you live in a country that is not a democracy. You live in a tyranny of money, a tyranny where people who have money, who make money, control the politicians who control your lives. That is not a democracy. That is a tyranny, and you're living in it.